everybody? Welcome to Livestream with Derek. It's part of the Knights of Last Call YouTube channel. How's everybody doing? Yes, Stephen, I made it home in time. For those of you who are not aware, I was a guest today on another live stream. I was on the Roll for Combat live stream, and that went a lot longer than I expected it to. So definitely had my plate full today, as they would say. We got Steven in here. We got Brune Brassax all the way down from Australia in the chat. Anthony was in here, but he had to leave, had a game to play. That's a very acceptable excuse. Ben, good evening to you as well. Marissa, jamming a new Pathfinder 2nd Edition adventure tonight. Watched a lot of our Rise videos to prep. Hopefully not the last one. Frank, we got Kieran, we've got Iodine, and of course, GM Scott. Michael Anderson's here. Thomas is here. Hey, how's everybody doing? Good to see some of our patrons. Good to see some of our usual live stream folks in the chat as well. So of course, obviously, we have been sort of filling in with this live stream on this Tuesday, a sort of a bonus live stream, as this used to be our, at least in the month of February, this was for our AP, but of course that came to an untimely demise, and we're still in the process of figuring that one out. What we want to play next, what I want to play next. Part of the problem of being part of such an amazing and such an incredibly diverse community like the Knights of Last Call is I am a bad influence to many people, and they are also a bad influence to me. And we've got folks. I'm playing in a Star Trek adventure game ran by one of our patron members, and really loving this 2d20 system. It's the Star Trek adventure system, and it's the 2d20 system, which is by Modifius here. I think I've shown this before, but it's by Modifius, and it's a really interesting game system. I really like it. So I went and picked up another 2d20 system, and been really enjoying that. We've got people playing Forbidden Lands. There's a Mouse Guard game, Dungeon World, 7th Sea. I just learned about a game called Broken Compass, Lost Compass. Ben will put it in the chat. That sounds really awesome. And we're almost at 4K subs. Part of the beauty of this channel is I don't care. What does that mean, I don't care? I mean, I care about you. I care about all of you, especially the people who are here right now, especially people who are part of our Patreon. And I care about our subs as well, all 3,970 of them or something. But this isn't a full-time gig for us, and it's nice to be able to use that money that we get from generous tips and donations and from our patron support to do fun things and send out merch and stickers and prizes. We've sent out at least 5 or 6. Oh my gosh.
GM Scott tipped $50. I've missed the last few live streams. Let's get this party started. And
right away we did with GM Scott. Thank you, GM Scott. $50 tip. Wow. GM Scott, one of our incredibly generous donators. You know who you all are. GM Scott is definitely one of them. Big supporter of this channel, and really appreciate everything that that he does for us. And quite frankly, GM Scott is in that bag of bad influences, people who make me want to explore the role-playing space. And recently, just seeing the deluge of games that are being run, and I understand. My squeezing arm. Listen, I understand. I was unemployed and broke AF for about 3 or 4 years. luckily I had some savings and some scratching by that I did, but I understand completely. You know, I think that's, you know, those who can do. And, you know, we appreciate everybody who can, you know, participate and donate with their time or with their wallets. But, you know, at the end of the day, I put no emphasis or no requirement on anyone or anything for anything like that. Instead, I'll just say thank you for being here. Besides, GM Scott's dropping, it's a 50. Jackson? No. Grants. He's dropping grants. I haven't seen a $50 bill in a long time. A lot of hundreds, though, from my trip from Vegas. I still need to take that money up to the bank. Like I said, I caught a bit of a cold on the way home, and haven't been able to make it up to the bank yet. But anyways, night's last call. So we, you know, ostensibly we're a Pathfinder 2 channel, and I like Pathfinder 2. I was on a Pathfinder 2 live stream today, but man, there are so many sweet games out there, and I think what I'm really trying to figure out is, like, is there a way? Did I bet on black? Yes, actually I did. I did a roulette spin, a bet on black, and I lost. So, you know, you can't win every time. By definition, you can't win every time. That's very true. I don't really usually deal in cash either, but so yeah, you know, part of the understanding that part of my problem is that I've come to realize as I've grown in age that there are many different aspects to my personality and what I want out of a role-playing game, and I have naively, foolishly, you might say, tried for many years to try to find one game to rule them all, and you know, try to house rule games and try to make them sort of scratch every single itch. And the fact is like, I've been playing these games for a very long time, and so my palette is fairly sophisticated. There are a lot of different things that I really like about role-playing games that it's very difficult, and dare I say impossible, for one game to satisfy all those scratches, those urges. And the dilemma with this has always been, you know, I was in a mindset of, you play one game, you play it every week, you make progress, you play that game over and over and over again. And, you know, that model, for me, I think became a bit flawed, because there were, you know, as I grew up and I was exposed to more and more games, I realized, wow, this is an element of a game that I really, really enjoy. And this is really satisfying a role-playing urge for me that isn't satisfied by this other game. So I would jump ship. I would hop over to that other game. I'd play that for a little while. And then I would say, oh, okay, I kind of miss this other game. Let me try to Frankenstein kludge these things together and try to make this one game. That way I could just play one game every week, maybe twice a week, and just be very, very, very happy with that and not have to worry about anything and just play this one game. You know, it just doesn't work. And I've talked on this channel before about GNS, and GNS is something that was created, I think, by Ron Edwards, and Ron Edwards ran a old Usenet forum called The Forge, which was all about indie game development, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he created this original concept of this GNS theory. And his theory, he kind of abandoned it and changed it a little bit. Ron Edwards would go on to create Sorcerer, which was like this very landmark indie RPG that sort of led to Vincent Baker's Apocalypse World, which kind of kicked off the next revolution of indie game development with the Powered by the Apocalypse engine. We don't talk about Usenet. Yeah, it was that all long ago. But I've sort of kind of taken my own spin on this GNS theory, but what this theory really tries to say is that there are different aspects, to these games that we play, different sections, different motivating elements, and it's very difficult for a game to be great in all three. You can be amazing in one. You can be pretty great in two. It's very hard to be really, really good in all three. In fact, it's almost impossible. The way that you kind of tap into all three elements is by being kind of mediocre in all three. And that gives you broad market appeal. But when you're someone like me, sometimes that can make the game fall a little short. Frank, question. What was the highlight of my trip to Vegas? Oh, well, I mean, probably the time that I won a bunch of money. I won most of my money on like almost the last day. I was playing Pai Gow, which is like it's a poker game. You get dealt 7 cards, and the dealer gets dealt 7 cards, and you have to make 2 hands. You have to make a 2-card hand out of your 7 card, and a 5-card hand out of your 7 cards. And obviously a 2-card hand can only be either high card or it could be a pair. That's the most you can make with 2 cards. And then your backhand, which has 5 cards, it could be a straight, it could be 2 pair, it could be whatever. The only rule is that your hand of 5 cards has to be a better poker hand than your front hand. And then the dealer does the same thing. And if both of your hands beat both of the dealer's hands, you win. Your bet, you get paid 1-to-1 on your bet. If they both lose, you lose your bet. And if you beat one but not the other, it's a push. So the game pushes a lot, which means you can play for a long time. It's pretty fun. But there's like a side bet that you can make called the fortune bet. And it's just kind of like a slot machine bet. It's just a bet on what's in your hand. Like, did you get a really great poker hand? It's a sucker bet. It's got a really bad house edge. But I was playing with my friend. It was last day. I had a little bit of money. So I said, I'll play it. And we weren't even playing that long. And I got dealt a royal straight flush, which paid like 300 or something to 1. And I had made a $5 bet. So that paid $1,500. And not only does it pay me $1,500, it pays like everyone at the table like $50 or $100 just as like a celebration bonus. So that was pretty sweet. I really enjoyed that. What else did I enjoy? We went to some really good restaurants. I've really been impressed with almost every restaurant I went to. We ate at one of Gordon Ramsay's. He has like a English, I think it's called like English pub kitchen or something, in Vegas. It's connected to the Caesar's Palace. We went there for lunch. I had Gordon Ramsay's pub burger. It was pretty good. It was pretty delicious. What else? I'm trying to think of some other things. We went to Bobby Flay's Italian restaurant. It's like seafood restaurant. It's called Amalfi. That was incredible. That was an incredible dish. Did I get spanked at the Hofbrauhaus? No, I did not. I've actually only ever been to one Hofbrauhaus, and it was here in Cleveland. Hey, Josh. Awesome. Glad to see you here. So yeah, excuse me. So part of what I realize is that there's a lot of different elements to games, and I've been trying to sort of cram all of my desires for one game into one system. And I just don't think I can do it. I like playing Pathfinder 2, and certainly, on the live stream, that was a lot of fun, but I don't think that's the only game, that I want to play. And I get that, this kind of gets back to what I was saying before. We sort of built ourselves up as a Pathfinder 2 channel, and we are going to be producing Pathfinder 2 content, and we are kicking off a Pathfinder 2 mega game here in the next couple days on our Patreon. We're going to do a video about it, sort of a release video. And actually, I was talking to the Roll for Combat guys today, and just hearing them talk about their business and the ways that they're running their games and producing content. It gets me excited about the idea of maybe everyone's doing Kickstarters. NoNat's doing a Kickstarter, and they've got Kickstarters and they're working on products and, plans. And that's really exciting. Like, I think it's a little terrifying to think about. It's also, I think, kind of presumptuous to think that you can be a game designer and design stuff for other people. But I think it'd be fun. And I think, if I was ever going to do it, a community like the Knights of Last Call would be the community that I would want to be a part of and to have help me, and sort of not only as a way to support it financially, but as a way to reward them for that support by saying, hey, here's some really cool ideas. Like, there's a lot of areas in Pathfinder 2 that me personally as a player of the game, forget being a GM for a second, but me personally as a player of the game would love to see develop further. And we've talked about this a little bit before about like why on the podcast, especially Aaron has done a good job of talking about this, talking about like why there aren't more skill feats. And I think there should be a lot more skill feats. I think there should be more skill feats. I think there should be more rituals. I think there should be better expanded systems around archetypes. I would love to see better spell systems, different spell systems, kind of collated, fixed, maybe I'd use the term, weapons systems. And I just think there's even some class feats or class builds that are quite frankly just underpowered and underserved. And I'd love to see those get better as well. But like, there's just some areas that are just really, really, possible to, I think it's just an untapped reservoir. Rituals, spells, magic items, skill feats, general feats. Damien says I'm late. Can you start over? Sorry, not really. I was just talking about Vegas, Damien, and kind of just talking about why it is that I am the way that I am and why it's so painful to be me and to be surrounded by just like so many different role-playing game systems that I want to play. And there's only so much time in the day. And, between me and you, there's a challenge that I face as sort of a content creator, right? Which is every time I sit down to think about a game or play a game or whatever, there's something in the back of my mind going, why aren't you recording this, right? Why aren't you producing this into content for your fans, for your patrons, for your subs, for your channel? And then I kind of get into a mindset of going like, is that what's right for my channel? Is that what's best for my channel? Is that going to be what's going to make my Patreons happy? Is that what's going to be what's going to grow my YouTube channel? And then I think to myself, well, maybe not. And then I sort of like second guess whether I want to play that game or not. And it sort of has led me into a kind of a rut where it's difficult for me to really separate what is my personal desire for a game versus what is my desire for the channel. I mean, now granted, one of the things about this channel has been that for the most part, I mean, there is no difference between Derek in real life and Derek, the channel personality, right? Like you kind of get what you see. And I kind of play it the way that I play it. I'm not really trying to overly please anyone, but we've got a little bit of a growing channel here, and I do want to be respectful of that, and I do want to be cognizant of that.
$25 for the amazing content.
Thank you, Rubicon. I appreciate it. Appreciate Mr. Joey. He is a stalwart supporter of the channel and show. Thank you very much. I appreciate the strong encouragement. Because that's the other side of the coin, right? Which is, like, how do I put this? I look at other channels and I see what they're producing, and I go, okay, I could produce something like that, some 8-minute video or 9-minute video. But I don't feel like that is like. And that might be good for the algorithm. It might even be good for you. I'm sure you guys would love some of these videos that I would have to produce. But I go, but like, is that uniquely me? Basically, I'm overthinking it. And I just kind of get into my head about it. Now, Michael asked a really great question. You could always put a poll to see if your ideas are popular. Very true. In fact, one of the things that I'm behind on is I told myself when my Patreon got to 100, because again, I love and respect everybody who's here. Hey,
$25. Do what makes you happy.
Thank you, Steven. You make me happy. Thank you, Steven. Thank you guys for the generous tips and getting us to the goal real quick. Appreciate it. It's always a nice vote of confidence from my supporters, and yeah, do what makes me happy, right? Easier said than done, because like I was saying, I'm kind of schizophrenic. Funded in 20 minutes. Yes, exactly. I'm kind of schizophrenic, right? Like, there are times when I want to sit down and I want to math out, like, okay, we can stack this buff and I can use this magical item and I can combo with this feat and you can use this power thing and, figure it all out. And play like Pathfinder 2. And I like the challenge. I mean, I used to play D&D minis, which was like D&D with no role-playing whatsoever, right? It's like a competitive guy. I used to go to Gen Con and enter Dungeons & Dragons miniatures tournaments using the D&D minis rules. So imagine taking the PF1 or 3rd edition combat rules and just playing a miniature game with them. And I loved it. Tim loved it too. We actually used to go to Gen Con and we would enter D&D minis tournaments together. I thought it was really, really fun because I enjoy that. I mean, I loved 4th edition D&D, and 4th edition D&D had a lot of, good things and bad things. But one of the things it was really big into was creating this really complex combat system. And I think Pathfinder 2 is in that era. Greg, Monster Hearts are bust. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the super chat. $25. Thank you, Greg. So Monster Hearts are bust. So I think there's a couple questions here, and again, you are my people and we will talk. PF2, my squeezing arm says PF2 needs to loosen up the math a bit, eject a bit of control chaos. I actually do agree with that. I kind of tried to talk about that today on the Roll for Combat, but I didn't want to distract them from like the main thesis or topic of their destruction or of their video description. But yeah, I agree with that. I think some of the outcomes are too predictable in PF2. There's a weird area where you go into an encounter and you go, I am 99% sure that they are going to win this. And then you go into a next encounter and you go, I am 90% sure, 80% sure that they are not going to win this. That in-between spot is very difficult, I think, to find. And I think I'm getting close to it, but I think it does vary based on what the class composition is, the ancestry composition, the skill of the players, the feats they've chosen. That is that little, kind of in-between there. So, Damien saying, we'll watch you play Monster Hearts. Monster Hearts are bust. The goal was a Monster Heart stream. So let's talk about that, right? And again, like I said, we're very real about this. There are some games that we'll pick on Bob because I like to pick on Bob. Okay. And Frank had asked this question here. Do you think Bob ready for a live stream game he will DM? No, but I think he should do it anyways, if that makes any sense, because I think seeing Bob what he's good with and what he struggles with, I think would be very, very, I think that would be a good educational experience for everybody. And I think seeing people struggle can be a little cringe and, it can be a little painful sometimes, but I still think it could be beneficial. One of the things I would love to do is to have Bob do that and then, have like someone like me or and Aaron and, maybe some guest GM from the Patreon, sort of watch it back, kind of and sort of take a moment and sort of like, John Madden it and sort of break it down and say like, okay, you could see this is the mistake he made here. And I'd love to break that down as well. Damien, thank you for the super chat. He says he's been reading Essence 20, which the G.I. Joe game uses. And actually, Ben, a member of our Patreon, a friend of his, worked on that system, where checks at D20 plus skill die injects much needed randomness into the D20 paradigm. Yeah, one of the things I remember reading is that Mike Merles was a really big fan of the proficiency die instead of the proficiency bonus. I really do like that, but I think there's an issue with the randomness, and I think it's not that it's not a randomness of number. It's a randomness of outcome, right? In Pathfinder 2, you have these very, or especially in most games, you have a very binary outcomes, right? You either pass or you fail. And yes, in Pathfinder 2, we do have critical failure and we do have critical success, but a lot of times, those are fairly rare. And even when you do get a critical success, you just like jump farther, or you climb a little bit faster. And most of the time, in my experience, outside of combat, where a critical hit is obviously amazing and you double damage and the critical specialization effect, a lot of times getting a critical hit on like a skill check isn't as big of a difference as you would think as getting a critical hit. And so the randomness in Pathfinder 2 is less about injecting more randomness into the result or the roll. It's more like injecting randomness into the outcome, which I'll talk about maybe later, or try to make it make more sense. But okay, but that being said, I do think the system does sound very interesting, and I do like skill dies and that mechanic of adding that in. That's very cool. So Iodine said, but if Monster Heart happens, then some of your players will die of cringe. And this is kind of exactly what I wanted to talk about. I don't want to sound like an elite bastard, okay, or like some sort of ass, but there are some games that I treat with a certain level of respect, and not every player, whether it's because of their temperament, or it's because of their motivation, or it's because of their skill, is appropriate for every game. So like a good example of this would be like many years ago, I joined a bar league floor hockey team with Tim. I joined his floor hockey. I grew up, I play hockey, so I was like, I'll play floor hockey. And we're talking about, this is held at a bar. There's like a gym attached to the bar. People are literally drinking beers, between games. And if a team doesn't have enough players, you just sub out someone else from another team to fill in the spot. And we're on this team, and you pay, I don't know what it was, $100 or something like that for the season or something per player. And I get there for this first game, and there's a guy on our team who's really good, but he's also like there to win. And he's yelling and he's screaming at people, and he's telling another player on our team that, like they want to come in, they want to get some floor time. And he's telling him, no, you need to sit. The game is too close. We're only up by 1 or 2 or something. I don't want to blow the lead. And I remember I kind of beefed with the player at the end of during the game. And afterwards, I went to Tim and I said, hey, listen, I understand this guy's been a part of your team for a long time. I'm happy to pay for the whole team if you kick him off your team. But I don't want to, this is what I came here for. My motivation, my goals don't align with his goals. And if you're not prepared to kick him off, and rightfully so, you shouldn't, I will happily pay my $100 for the entire season, but I won't be back after tonight. Because this isn't the type of game that I want to play. I want to play floor hockey. Came to play, but I didn't come here for this hyper competitive aspect. So same thing's true with a role-playing game. So for a game like Monster Hearts, it is not a game, any game could be played for laughs, but for me, a game like Monster Hearts is kind of like a game like Legend of the Five Rings, right? That is not a game that I want to play for laughs. Legend of the Five Rings is a serious take on sort of a fantasy version of sort of Japanese culture and the Bushido aspect of the samurai culture in Japan, along with some other East Asian influences. And that alone means I feel like it should be treated with a modicum of respect. But outside of that, that's just not a game that I personally want to play for zingers and for laughs and, people just laughing and, having a good time. And it sounds stupid, right? Like, what do you mean laughing and have a good time? Isn't that what these games are for? Aren't these games just for fun? And I say, no, I don't think that they are, though. I don't think that fun needs to be the overriding goal for everyone. Because, I do think that everyone should be having fun, but I think you need to temper that with the right expectation. And so for something like Monster Hearts, which, it itself is sort of a silly concept, right? I mean, to a certain extent, right? It's vampires and things, but what the game is trying to do is explore. It's written by Avery Alder, who was born Joe McDowell, and as a trans person, this game is exploring sexuality, it's exploring queerness, and it's doing so in a very open and encouraging way. But it's also exploring the idea that your teenage years and being a monster are both sort of co-conflated, and in the sense that being a monster is a metaphor for not being in control of who you are and what you want to be. And this game takes the presupposition that being a teenager and going through all of these crazy changes is kind of a synonym for being a monster, and vice versa, and maybe even a synonym for queerness. And through exploring what it means, to be, say in the game, you are a hull. You're an artificially constructed being. That's the monster. You're like a Frankenstein monster. You were created, but you don't feel like this is your body. That could be very much a metaphor for the way a lot of queer people feel. It could be a metaphor for the way that a lot of teenagers feel.
Mimic tip $10.
Thank you, Rope Mimic. Appreciate the tip. And to me, that is it's a serious subject matter, and I don't think the game was created for a bunch of horror laughs. Now, I'm not saying that, again, I was picking on Bob. I'm not saying that Bob couldn't do that, but what I am saying is I don't know that Bob, one, wants to do that, two, is capable of doing that. And again, I am picking on Bob because he's my boy. Just like there are people with whom they take the game very, very seriously. Any game. And if I wanted to get together and play, grab some beer, grab some pretzels, grab some pizza, and let's roll dice, kick ass, and take names, that might not be the best time to go play with, a person X or person Y, right? Like, you got to get the right crew for the right game. So all that being said, part of my concern is I just want to make sure that myself, the group, are all on the right line. And for me, it's easy to jump. I can go play a Pathfinder 2 game where we're slamming some pizza and we're moving miniatures and laughing while I pull out a Qual's Feather token and try to explain to the GM why I'm dropping a huge anchor on top of somebody. And then the next day, I could be playing a Legend of the Five Rings game, and it's a very serious moment where a character realizes that they have betrayed their own principles and is contemplating ritual suicide. And it's not done for laughs, right? It's done for real. And Ben is of course correct on everything. He says, this is why I have 5 group. Games should be tailored to the group, but I want it all. Same, Ben. Same. But I don't know how he does it. It's crazy. It's insane. Again, I think, I do think that the PBTA game for Bob is Worldwide Wrestling. Honestly, the PBTA game for Bob that might also be really good is Dungeon World. Of all the PBTA games, like Monster Hearts and Dungeon World are both PBTA games, but Dungeon World is very much more a sort of rock and rolling, ass kicking, fly high, kick ass, take names type game. But I'm very, very particular about how I play games. And a member of the patron, the owner of my favorite local game store, a guy we call Dirt, for years he's been saying, Derek, when are you going to come and run a game for me? He's running a couple like 1-shot, 2-shot games with me over the years, and he's just like, it was incredible. It was so much fun. Like, you put so much, awesomeness into it. I want another game. And I go, yeah. I go, find me a group of players. If you can find me a group of good players, then I will happily, game for you. And good players doesn't mean necessarily skilled players. It means players whose motivations and whose desires are aligned with mine in that particular game. And that, I think, is the most critical thing, is that everybody be on the same page. And taking a full step back,
Greg tipped $25.
Hey.
I'll hop off in a little bit, but can't wait to watch the rest later.
Thank
Great
you.
Stream so far.
Thank you, Greg. Very much appreciate you. Thank you. Hope you catch it later. Love you for the tip, buddy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're talking deep stuff here. Because it's easy, right? When you only play the one game, when you just play 5th edition D&D, right? That's like the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room. You just make, that's it. You just play your game. But quite frankly, 5th edition doesn't have enough grip to it to really make a difference one way or the other. Meaning like let's even take a game that's older than that. Let's take basic D&D, right? Basic D&D, we all know, has a fairly high lethality rate. There's a lot of things that can kill you. Your hit points are very low. Your armor class isn't that great. A single drop of poison, make a save, fail, you could be dead. So that game sort of requires a specialized type of person, right? A person who's willing and ready to sort of hunker down and play it straight, because if that's not what you're set up for, you're going to end up being very disappointed. A game like Legend of the Five Rings assumes that your character, you want this drama and this tension between what your samurai desires as a person, as a living, breathing man or woman who yearns for things, versus their duty and obligation as this sort of celestial part of a celestial order where they owe undying fealty to a lord. And that tension of wanting versus loyalty versus duty versus desire drives the game. If that seems like a huge, horrible headache to you, that's not the game that anybody should be playing. And if you don't want to engage in that, if you're not leaning into that, then that could be, a huge problem. I've seen that happen a lot of times when I've played games like Fate. Fate runs and operates on the exchange of fate points between the GM and the players and vice versa. Players have these aspects, and using an aspect of your character can be very empowering. It can give you a special ability. It can give you a bonus. It's kind of how you succeed at the game. To use one of your aspects, though, you have to have a fate point that you give to the GM in order to empower that, fate point, or empower that aspect. It could be kind of counterintuitive, because your character in Fate wouldn't actually have something like jetpack written on their character sheet. They would have an aspect called, I have a jetpack. So if your character does something like, hey, that person's about to fall off the bridge, how about I zip in with my jetpack and get them? Well, in the context of the game, that jetpack doesn't exist unless you spend a fate point in order to sort of activate the aspect. Even though you're like, well, wait, when I have the jetpack on my back, and you go, yeah, it's not trying to simulate real life. It's not trying to simulate that you have a jetpack. What it is trying to simulate is a currency exchange of fate points between you and the GM, because the GM can also cause problems for you and give you a fate point as sort of a compensation for causing problems. Your aspects can cause problems for you. And a player who is leaning into fate encourages that, or even desires that, or even brings it up. They say, hey, they point at their character who has an aspect called fiery temper. And they say, I know that we're just about to convince the general that, we're clear of all charges, but what if my character's fiery temper kind of flares up right now and I make things really awkward by, yelling and disrespecting the general? you're like actively sabotaging your character, your party's efforts. But that's what the game is encouraging. That's what this narrative currency exchange is for. Now, some people hate that. Some people love that. But if you're not going to be bought into that, you're going to have a really, really, really hard time playing in that game because you're not going to have any fate points. You're going to look at your character. They're going to have all these aspects, but you're not going to be able to do anything with them because you don't have any fate points. And then you're going to get really frustrated because your character says, I have a jetpack, but you can't actually use it because you don't have fate points. How am I supposed to get fate points? Well, you get fate points by having bad things happen to you. Why would I ever want something bad to happen to me? Right? And suddenly you're just trapped in this situation where you have a very dissatisfied player. So yeah, Marissa said, had to interview like 10 people to find a good fit. I believe it. I believe it. And that's not even like saying that these players are bad players. There are some people who I think are fantastic players, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a right fit for my GMing style or for the specific and particular game that I want to play. Total Entropy says 5e is like McDonald's. Everyone kind of enjoys it, but no one says it's their favorite restaurant. I mean, the weird thing is nowadays people do say that. And kind of like the same way that like there are people who legitimately will like choose a McDonald's over, say, a small local restaurant because they say that it's their favorite. And I'm not knocking 5e for this because that gives the game tremendous flexibility and all of these difficulties that I'm talking about making sure someone fits into the right bucket are kind of washed away with 5e. I mean, even Pathfinder 2, right? Pathfinder 2, we talked about GNS, and I didn't really describe these, but G stands for gamist. So gamist, think chess, think checkers, think solitaire, think euchres. A game. It has mechanics. It's just the interaction, mechanics, bonuses, pluses. Anytime that you're fiddling with numbers and doing things like that, having feats, all these things are very gamist. They don't really make sense from like a simulation standpoint, right? Like something like power attack in Pathfinder 2 is a very gamist type mechanic because why if I don't have this feat, I can't strike hard? What is this feat actually doing in the real world? It doesn't really make any sense. And you're like, and what do I have to have it in order to use it? Like, if I don't have that, does that mean that my character is incapable of swinging harder? And by the definition of the game, yes, but that's because Pathfinder 2 isn't trying to be a complete simulation. It's not trying to be, The Sims role-playing edition. It's trying to be a game with role-playing elements. So that's the G. N stands for narrative. And to me, this means mechanics in a game that are specifically there in order to promote story. To a certain extent, inspiration is like this from 5e. It's the first time in D&D, like the tiniest little drop that we've ever gotten of a narrativist element. But fate aspects are a huge narrative element because they don't even make sense in real life, and they don't really make sense from a game perspective. A game, you're trying to win a game, so why would I want something that's going to be bad for me? But you want narrativist elements because it's going to make your character's life interesting and dramatic and full of drama and tension, and it's going to cause them problems, and that's going to lead to fun and exciting adventures, and that's what you came there for, is to see your character get into trouble. And then the last one is S, which is simulation, which is this game is trying to simulate some sort of reality or some sort of fiction. And these elements exist not because it's a fun game mechanic and not because it promotes a good story, but just because it's realistic, right? Tracking arrows isn't particularly fun from a game perspective. I mean, it's not even really balanced in Pathfinder 2. It doesn't really help you tell a good story. It's there because it's real. And there are certain elements of simulation that can be really fun because that's when you start treating the game as sort of a life simulator. And there are plenty of games out there like The Sims where there are life simulators and people want to engage with the game as if it was a proxy for reality. So 5e exists sort of in that middle of nowhere. It's got game elements, it's got simulation elements, and it has the briefest little touch of narrativist elements, which is why it's really funny that people use it for narrative games because it really doesn't actually really support that well at all. They should all be playing Fate, and I think they'd be having a lot more fun. But the point is, it doesn't do it bad, and people really like that, and you could take that game and you could apply it anywhere. Pathfinder 2 is clearly pushing the game into a more gamist direction. There are a lot more mechanical choices, right? If D&D 5e is checkers, Pathfinder 2 is chess, right? More rules, more complicated, but it's a much more involved and a much more in-depth game with storied history and people who study it for their whole lives. So increasing one element of that sort of GNS can sometimes take away from other elements. We talked about this in past live streams where I've said, you know, when you're so worried about keeping all of your mechanics high, I mean, this is kind of a controversial thing that I think Taking 20 said, where I said, you know, there's nothing in Pathfinder 2 that prevents you from, say, role-playing. But the fact is, there's not a whole lot of mechanics in Pathfinder 2 that encourage it either. So while it's not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, it is saying that Pathfinder 2 game very much pushes you towards the sort of, if you can imagine a triangle, it's pushing you towards the sort of the G, right? It's pushing you towards that gamist. That's where I think Pathfinder 2 is kind of carving out its niche. It's saying, hey, there are some people for whom this middle ground isn't satisfying enough. It's not complex enough. They're bored of playing checkers. They want to play chess. And so here is a game that will encourage you to do that. And that'll push you in that direction. That's a push towards a G. But what I'm saying is I like games that are G, but I also like games that are N, and I also like games that are S. And there's no game that does all three of those very well. Yeah, we need a 3D graph to plot them on an XYZ axis. And I, for years, I mean, this used to be something that we used to do on drives to Gen Con, is we would talk about scoring games on a GNS score, and part of the challenge or part of the way that you could evaluate a game's greatness is by not only evaluating its GNS score, but by adding them together. This is all just some made-up framework that we had, by the way. This is nothing other than, a bunch of nerdy people who've been playing these games for like 100 plus years total, talking about a game. So, for example, a game might have a GNS score of, let's say, 5-2-5. And so you say, okay, it's 5-2-5, and its total score is 12. You may have another game, which is like a 7-3-7. Well, that game has a total score of 17. So in terms of overall greatness, that game is greater than the other game. But just because a game is greater than another game doesn't necessarily mean it's the best game for you. Because for some people, if you go too high, say in gamist or narrativist, the game actually becomes unappealing. You say, this is too much of this. I don't like playing a game this way. I don't like having all these mechanics and all these fiddly bits and trying to have all these numbers and memorize all these things and having 1,000 feats on my sheet. This is too much. Or I don't like having these elements on my character sheet that are designed to push me towards role-playing. I don't want to have mechanics for my narrative or for my role-playing. I want it to just be something that I do independent of the game. And for a long time, by the way, that is what D&D was. D&D was very much there was no N at all. It was just gamist and simulation. There were no rules for role-playing outside of first edition gave you a penalty if you violated your alignment, but they got rid of that pretty quick. So in second edition, third edition, there were no rules in the game designed to push or promote a narrative, a story, a plot, or role-playing. And thus, role-playing, what we think of as role-playing, not just talking in character, but like making decisions not because it's what's best for me, the player, but because it's what the character would do based on their personality, their motives, their background, their history, their feelings, their thoughts. That layer of role-playing was essentially ephemeral. You were adding it on top for no particular reason. Role-playing in D&D...
Medic Bush tipped $25.
Hey, thank you, CMB. Love you. Thank you very much for the tip. Appreciate you. Appreciate the tip. That's awesome. No message, but I'll just assume it's because you're awesome. So thank you very much, Combat Medic Book. But like role playing in, second edition D&D or third edition D&D, kind of even fifth edition D&D, if you ignore inspiration, maybe even Pathfinder 2, is like role playing in Monopoly. It's like role playing in chess. It's completely independent of what I'm doing in the game, right? Like I could just be like, hey, my queen stalks forward with her elite guard, taking a strange path through the, I don't have to do that. I could just move my queen and take your pawn, but I could add that on top. Now, of course, many GMs interject and add a certain amount of narrativist element to the game because they'll say, oh, that was a really cool description. That made a lot of sense. That was really fun. I'm going to give you a bonus, or I'm going to make the DC lower. Now, don't get this confused with the GM saying, oh, that's a really good idea. You would totally be in a strong ambush position. I'm going to give you a bonus to attack roll. That is not narrativist. That is simulationist, right? That is you saying, oh my gosh, that queen was in such a good position. It makes total sense that they should be able to take 2 pawns with 1 move because the queen is such an ambush. That's you interjecting a simulationist aspect into your game. But the narrative is you saying, is this making for a better story? That never really existed in the game. And how you role played your character, if your character made an attack roll and it was just an attack roll versus an orc that they didn't care about, versus this is your character's attack roll versus, Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. D&D didn't have any mechanics to represent that differentially. It just said, yeah, roll D20, add your strength and your base attack bonus. I don't know what to tell you. That's just the way it goes. Now, you might say, oh, but everybody house ruled it. Okay, fine, but that's still not the way that the game was actually designed. So over time, have sort of gravitated out to the corners. It's like my tolerance level is so high. I need a ton of narrative to make me feel the narrative. I need a ton of game to make me feel the game. I need a ton of simulation to make me feel the simulation. I need I need a bigger high in order to really feel something. And that means as I sort of push out towards the corners of this sort of triangle of the G, the N, and the S, number one, games in the middle, like 5th edition D&D, do not appeal to me because none of those elements is strong enough for me to get a fun exact response, right? It's not a knock against 5th edition. It's me, right? I'm just saying this doesn't do it. It's you go to the restaurant and you say, order, I'd like the spicy burrito, and you're used to eating jalapeno ghost peppers or something, and they bring you the spicy burrito and you eat it and you go, I didn't even taste the spice. Well, that's not their fault. They're just giving you a burrito that is their spicy burrito. You're the one with the insane spice tolerance. So number one, it pushes me out towards the corner, which makes more middle of the road type games less appealing to me. But 2, as I said, it's very hard for a game to be really good in 2 things, let alone 3. No game I've ever encountered has been good in all 3 things. And that means that the games that I want to play, in order to get a strong G and a strong N and a strong S, I have to play a variety of games. And that can be challenging because number one, we live in the real world. There's people, there's schedules, there's a million different things that we're juggling. And it can be difficult to, unless you're Ben, to play in all these different games. Number 2, I'm very picky in particular who I play with. And that's on me. And 3, I can't expect that the other people that I play with to be as schizophrenic about all this as I am. So that puts me in a weird spot where I go, I would love to bust out Monster Hearts, grab Bob, grab Tim, grab Aaron, and say, we're going to play Monster Hearts. But I worry that, that might not be the game that they want to play. And I don't want to make them play the game just because we think it would be fun to watch us play Monster Hearts. I want it to be something that they genuinely want to engage with. And so that's where, I that's where I kind of, struggle through things. Like, obviously, if you watch Rise of the Rune Lords, that big part of this game was like, hey, I'm going to bring in some new players, people who've never played TTRPGs before. We're going to teach them the rules. We're going to onboard them. We're going to kind of go through this lesson learned. Rise of the Rune Lords is already kind of silly in its own way. We never really took the campaign very seriously, and we had fun with that. But is that the way that I always want to play a role-playing game? No, very much not, right? Again, I don't want to sound like an elitist prick, but, sometimes I want to play at a very high level. Are you saying, oh, Derek, do you want to go play with the Critical Role people? No, I don't think I would have fun there either. So again, that's why I said it's not about people being better or not. It's about the style and the type of the game. And I'm just very sensitive to that because I kind of know exactly what I want. I've been playing these games for so long. I have been exposed to so many hundreds of games. I've played games I don't even know the names for because every year at Gen Con, I would go to the Indie Games on Demand room and at least once or twice a day. And sometimes I would just play some random indie game that some indie game developer was doing as a part of a play test. And maybe it never got published and I just play that game. So I've been exposed to so many different ways of playing these games and mechanics and interactions that for me, like, I know what I like. And I'm not just happy getting, just cheese pizza. I want the pepperoni, red onion, banana peppers. That is, that's what I want. Well, while we have is cheese pizza, I'll just pass. It's fine. If I don't have to, I won't eat unless I'm starving. So, Storm Phoenix, my tolerance is high. That's the thing that happens when you use a substance a lot like an addict. Yeah, I guess I'm an RPG addict. I burn myself out, and that's. There's a lot of messages here. I was going off on a rant for a long time, so I'm going to try to read back on some of these. But let's see. All right, people talking about this. Hamakobo, who I have played with and do play with, who Hamakobo is the exact type of player who I want in a Fate game. He gets the message, he understands it, he's on board with it, and he's not just lukewarm about it, where he goes, yeah, I'll play anything. I'll play anything is great for 5th edition. I'll play anything is great for sitting down for a game of Monopoly or Scrabble or Clue. If I'm sitting down to play a game of Twilight Imperium or Caverna or, whatever, some other insane board game, hey, I want to sit down for a 200-hour session of Gloomhaven or Game of Fate. I don't want, oh, yeah, sure, I'll play that. That's not what I want. I don't want someone who's dipping, toe dipping. I want someone who goes, yes, I like this. I like what this is doing. This appeals to my sensibilities, and I want to engage on this on the same level that you are engaging on this. So let's see. Ben shitting on game systems.
Atomic Hobo tip $10. When's the next Twilight Imperium night?
Oh, goodness gracious. I think we've played that game like a grand total of like once or twice. I just want to build my empire. Again, Twilight Imperium, it's a fun game, but it's not one that, and I understand that the people who really like Twilight Imperium, I wouldn't play Twilight Imperium with them because I'm like, hey, I'm not as into this as you are. And so I don't, want to do that. I don't want to ruin the game for you for my own selfish reasons. I enjoy 5e on the all pizza is good pizza, even bad pizza principle. This is the principle that I think I have accepted, that I have sort of transcended. Transcended makes it sound like it's a good thing. You could argue it's a bad thing. One thing that I learned from my ex-girlfriend is, she likes what she likes. And, she likes, her, even if we're going through a fast food drive-through, she wants this with this and this. And if she gets the sandwich and they didn't make it the right way, she just goes, I'm just not going to eat it. And she's not mad about it. She just goes, nope, it's not what I want. And if it's not, or if she goes to a restaurant and she really wants something and they don't have it on the menu, she just orders nothing. And she's not pouty about it. She's not mad about it. She just goes, I came here for this. They don't have this. And I am fine with my standards saying, I'll just take nothing instead. And I'm not going to pout about it because I understand that this is my standards. So the all pizza is good pizza, even bad pizza principle, me is like saying, I'm at the point where if I, I will eat pizza, but I'm talking about role-playing games here, but it's like, hey, we got pizza. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm like going to go to grab a slice. And if it's like, I don't know, what's the worst pizza, Little Caesars or something. And I go, I'm good. I'll eat later because I don't want to eat that. I don't think that is good. I don't think that's a way that I want to, use it. I mean, another way to think of it is like, that's a great principle, but imagine you're on a diet and you only have like 2,000 calories a day. Are you going to waste your 2,000 calories a day on bad pizza, even if it is pizza? Well, that's like me with role playing. I only have so much time to play these games, and I don't want to, spend it playing something that I don't want. Well, then, Derek, you'd rather play nothing? Yeah, maybe, right? Like I want it to be right. I want it to be what I want it to be. I'm very demanding, and I'm very much a pain in the ass. We did a question. What about Mutants and Masterminds do I like? What do I like about Mutants and Masterminds? What don't I like about Mutants and Masterminds? So in the simplest way I can explain what I like about Mutants and Masterminds is that it gives me and the players an understanding of a way to create comic book experiences through the use of hero points. In other words, I can, as the GM in a Mutants and Masterminds game, laugh maniacally as the heroes fall victim to the sleep paralysis gas that the villain has laid a trap. And I just say, hey, you all, the last thing you see is visions of the Mad Hatter laughing maniacally as you grab your throat and see your, companions choking and before everything goes dark. And I just go, hey, everybody, here is a hero point. I just cheated. You have your hero point because this is a comic book. And in a comic book, what happens? The heroes face adversity. Lois Lane gets in trouble. Mary J. Watson gets in trouble. The Green Goblin finds out Peter Parker's identity. He's going to expose him. Oh no, Peter Parker has a test and he has to be and save the, right? There's always these things that come up to challenge them again and again and again. That's part of what makes the comic book genre work. And in the game terms, that is me as a game master using the characters' personalities and backgrounds and things, all their aspects of their character, to cause them complications, to cause them problems, to let the bad guys kind of kick ass in the beginning of the adventure, and the heroes are building up these hero points. And then at the end of the adventure, what happens? The hero points come out, the heroes stand strong, and they win because they have, in the game sense, this big pile of broken hero points they can use to do these incredibly amazing, heroic things. What ends up happening is, at the end of a session, when I sit back and I look at what my friends and I have created out of nothing, is we have created a unique story that emerged dynamically, but fits the genre conventions of comic books. And that didn't happen accidentally. That happened very purposefully because the mechanics of Mutants and Masterminds, the game mechanics, include these narrative mechanical elements that actually create that cycle of creation. And that, to me, is what I really like about Mutants and Masterminds. It is fantastic. And by the way, Monster Hearts does this very well, too. In fact, I think for genre emulation, Monster Hearts does it even better. But Mutants and Masterminds is very, very elegant in its design. I don't have to force it. If you've played 5th edition or even Pathfinder 2, sometimes you feel like the game system is fighting you, right? There's a moment where everybody at the table wants or expects something to happen and it doesn't, or something unexpected. And that could be fine in its own right, but sometimes it feels like you're fighting the system, or the system's working against you in a way. Whereas in a game like Mutants and Masterminds, now, if I was using Mutants and Masterminds to run a dungeon crawling campaign, maybe that wouldn't be as successful, because though it's not the genre that the game is designed to, sort of push. Bruin asks Eminem, Mutants and Masterminds. It is a OGL superhero comic book game created by the Green Ronin Company. It was released probably back in like 2008-ish, 2000 something, 2008, 2009. I could be wrong about that, but mid 2000s, we'll say. And it's a system for designing and building superheroes. So that is what I like about Mutants and Masterminds. It delivers on that premise. Now, does it do other things as well? Maybe not. If you are looking for something that's very realistic and wait a second, why is every enemy, I thought kryptonite's supposed to be really rare. Why does every monster that we fight have kryptonite embedded in their claws? Why does every soldier have a few rounds of kryptonite ammo? Because that's what happens in comic books. And the game is created in a way to empower you as the GM to do that, but not to have to fudge and cheat and basically work against the game. No, instead the game works for you. And I really, really like that. Question, assuming you and your group have similar interests, how do you find the right game for your group at that moment? I mean, for me, it's usually just done through conversation. I mean, there are always going to be, leaders and followers in any gaming group or any social group. There's always going to be people with more opinions than other people. And I think that's another element that I'm kind of talking about, which is I'm very strongly opinionated. And there's a part of me that wants to only kind of play with people who are very strongly opinionated. It's like the difference between going to a music concert with someone who loves the band as much as you do, and you're going to the concert with them and you're in sync and you're both psyched and you're both like spouting band lore at each other, and you're both busting out the most obscure trivia, and when they start playing some crazy rare song that they usually don't play in their live sets, you both start freaking out at the same time, versus going to a concert with someone who goes, yeah, I like live music, I'll come. Oh, I know a couple of their songs. Yeah, I'm down. Like, that person isn't necessarily, they're not being a bad friend, but it's a different experience to go to a show with the former versus the latter. Is that me being an elite bastard? Maybe it is. I don't know. And what I'm trying to say is, I kind of blame my Patreon community. I kind of blame this YouTube channel, because I have met these incredibly passionate gamers who are very, very, particular about what they like and what they don't like. And I don't think there's anything wrong, by the way, like I said, with being someone who isn't as super involved or passionate. That's great. In fact, I envy you in a certain way. You can go and play on anything and probably legitimately be happy. But I can't. Pierre asks, is Northern Reaches your attempt to run Pathfinder 2nd Edition in the OSR mindset? Yes. Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. I feel like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, again, it is designed to be balanced so that any GM can run an adventure path and the game will work 1 to 20. And when it's all said and done, it just worked the whole way through. What I have said this used to be this was actually one of our original secret Patreon comments, but I've said this before. I like balanced games because I like to break them. I don't like broken feats. I don't like things that someone just says, hey, this feat is very broken. Like Gnomish Flick Maces. Hate them. It's the only thing banned in Northern Reaches. Because it's too powerful, and what do you have to do? You just take it. You just pick it. You didn't earn it. You didn't work for it. You just took it. You just took it out of the book. That, to me, is cheap. But in a game where we make decisions, we make good decisions that lead to us making better decisions, that lead to us making great decisions, I think that should be met with reward. And I am totally fine I am totally fine with a player or a group of players becoming more powerful than what the baseline of Pathfinder 2 intends because of their deeds, because of the actions that they took, because of the investment that they put into a game. That is a very old school sensibility. That is a very kind of simulationist aspect that I think is missing from Pathfinder 2. A great example of this is crafting, the base crafting rules. If you've done the math, you know that earning income and crafting are essentially they use the same table, and you're really not actually doing anything. So I could go into a town and basically pick any of my skills or any of my lores and go do, bricklaying work, and I will basically earn the money that I need in order to buy my next cool weapon. Me being trained in creating the weapon doesn't actually provide me with any sort of benefit or bonus. I don't necessarily love that. I don't even really like crafting, to be honest with you, but in my mind, that is the gamist element pushed too far in the name of balance, because they don't want that character to get an edge on the guy who's just laying bricks. I also think it's stupid and silly that you have these adventurers and heroes who are earning thousands of gold pieces, risking their lives, doing daring adventure, and then on their off time, they spend it doing 9-to-5 work, earning like 8 silver pieces a day. But I digress on that perspective. I need a stream where I score RPGs on a GNS score. Yeah, I mean, that would be a very boring and very educational stream. Total Entropy agrees. Let's see. I love it. Brune, who or what introduced you to role-playing games? Your first memorable experience, good or bad? So I talked about this a little bit, but I was really into The Hobbit. My copy's right here. As a kid, I don't really know how or why, but it just spoke to me. And I got given a couple of board games that came out like in the late 80s, Milton Bradley board games like Hero Quest, Dragon Strike. They were sort of D&D adjacent. And then I got given the D&D Black Box board set, which is a basic set. Learned to play that, was trying to play that with my sister and my friends. And then my older cousin, who's like 10 years older than me, found out that I was playing D&D, and he said, put away that basic child stuff. You're going to come out with us and play real D&D. And this was probably like 1992-ish. So I was like 10, and they were playing like an amalgamation of first edition and second edition because they had been playing for so long. They basically just kind of were it was like a first edition with a couple of second edition house rules put into it, because second edition had just come out like in 89. And I played with them for about a year or so. And then my cousin went to seminary, and he gave me basically all of his books. And he was like, I don't think they would like these in the seminary school. And then I was in junior high school, and I had all these D&D books. I met a couple of friends at the bus stop, and we were all nerds and geeky nerds, and they had just started playing D&D. And I said, oh, I've got advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And they said, oh, cool. All right, well, you can run the game. And then that's how we started. We started playing second edition AD&D, probably about, as a game master, probably circa 94 era. And started playing with my friends, 95, and then played through junior high into high school. We did a little bit of experimenting, some Earth Dawn, some Vampire the Masquerade. We kind of really got on a Dragonlance 5th edition, 5th Age kick with the Saga system. But more or less, kind of danced around. And then graduated high school, 3rd edition came out. I was in college. I don't want to say that I almost failed out of college because of 3rd edition D&D, but I almost kind of flunked out of college between a combination of 3rd edition D&D and StarCraft Brood War, because I was just playing D&D 3 or 4 times a week. A lot of 3rd edition, and then so on and so forth, and throughout the eras and the eons. So that is my kind of general history. Bob says he would smash a whole box of Little Caesars. Yes, Bob, I know you would. So I've had enough mediocre pizza. I reserve my time and effort for the stuff I really enjoy. Now, I'm not saying when it comes to, at least recently, I'm not the thin man I used to be. Although I did ride my Peloton bike yesterday, so I'm very proud of myself there. But yeah, when it comes to pizza, yeah, I'll probably eat any pizza. But when it comes to RPGs, as this metaphor, that's where I sort of draw the line next to it. So the calorie analogy, so on point. Yeah, exactly. You only have so much time. Use it for something that's really worth it, you know? On the topic of Mutants and Masterminds, do you prefer 2nd edition or 3rd edition? I can't figure out why I like 2nd edition better. I like 2nd edition a whole lot better. I don't know either. We'd have to sit down and figure that out, Atomic Hobo, but you are correct. I don't think 3rd edition is as good as 2nd edition. I almost want to say that 3rd edition is too streamlined. 2nd edition felt a little clunkier in some ways, and maybe that was better. I don't know. So yeah, M&M 2nd edition, with like a touch of the complication rules from M&M 1st edition. 2nd edition kind of glazed over it a little bit. Mutants and Masterminds 1st edition was very explicit about the complication rules, and I really liked them. But Mutants and Masterminds 2nd edition is definitely right here in my heart. I don't know what they lost with 3rd edition. If anything, the thing I don't like about Mutants and Masterminds now is the complication of all the PowerPoints and the fiddliness of alternate powers and power arrays and all that other stuff. That almost kind of gets in the way of what I want to be doing with a superhero RPG, which is really focusing more on the heroics, the choices, the sacrifices, not PowerPoint accounting, right? Which is like a classic GURPSism, where you're just sort of like, you're like an accountant trying to, drain and find points and like trying to maximize certain things. It could be a little bit tiresome and tedious, especially if you're doing alternate powers and you want to quickly use your lightning bolt power, but you want to use it to sort of maybe see if you can like short circuit a machine, and you're like, oh, okay, we'll convert it using the alternate power rules, and you're like, oh, this is almost too much effort. I'd rather play almost a simpler mechanical version of the game. Steve Kenson, who designed Mutants and Masterminds, did release a simpler version of the game called Icons, which I think is a little bit too simple. So again, it's me being very particular and very fiddly, but I think it pushed it too far towards simplicity. So I don't know. There's probably other superhero RPGs that have come out since I've really been into the superhero genre, and maybe they're worth taking a look. I've heard Masks is really good. I think I actually bought it, but I don't think I've read it yet. See, Ben says M&M 2nd edition, best RPGs of all time. One of the best. Design so tight. Let's see. Do an M&M campaign. That would be so fun. Oh, yeah. Jason says, talking about M&M and Monster Hearts, have you played Masks? I have not. I understand that it is a superhero powered by the Apocalypse game. And again, I think I own it, but I don't think I've read it because I've been so knee-deep in Pathfinder 2 the last couple years, so... Question, in reference to GNS, how do you see lore and settings supporting narrative? Does it? No. When I say narrative, I mean narrative elements to the system itself that actively promote you and your group to create fun and or compelling stories. The setting element or lore element, most of the time that doesn't really interface at all with those elements of the game, I suppose. The closest you could probably say to that would be like, when you have an archetype or a feat that specifically references like Aldori Duelist. That is an example of the game, of the setting supporting the sort of mechanics, but it's still not like, what is an Aldori Duelist? Are there mechanics in the game that make you play like an Aldori Duelist? And I don't mean like because you have a cool rapier, but like, what does it mean to be an Aldori Duelist? So probably not. I'm trying to think of an example of where that might be true. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. There might be a way. I just don't know. But the default line of does lore and setting actually support the narrative? No, it doesn't. When I'm talking about supporting the narrative, I mean through the game mechanics. The best example of this would be, imagine a game system where your character had 3 personality traits or 3 drives on your character sheet. These are what motivate and drive your character. When your character does something that is in line with their motivation or their personality, even if it wouldn't be the smartest decision, and the GM said, hey, you player, I'm awarding you 50 experience points or 80 experience points or 100 experience points. That is an example of where the narrative mechanics are driving the game towards creating narrative / plot / role-playing opportunities and elements. You just want passionate players that want to play, not just window shoppers that are half invested. Yeah. I mean, again, that's what I want, right? Like, that's like what I really, truly, desperately want, right? I want people who are just as enthused and engaged about these very particular things as I am. And that can be difficult because not everybody is super crazy like I am. In Sync or In Sync, is Derek into boy band pop? I owned all 3 of the first In Sync albums, and I could probably sing most of them probably by heart. Maybe if I had like the music in the background. High school Derek was definitely cruising around the streets with some dirty pop, or what was it? What was the name of that album? No Strings Attached. Was that the name of that? Yeah, second album, No Strings Attached. I think that was the name of their second album. That slapped. That was a really good album. My player has been kicking ass role playing, took huge risks. They earned X, and I think that's awesome. That's really great. What I'm saying is I love games that formalize that. It's not just it's not like a reward, it's nice to reward good role playing, but it's even better for me personally when there is an explicit framework or system that the player knows about. So it's almost like, it sounds kind of silly, but like you can tactically and strategically role play your character to gain benefits that then promote this cycle of role playing, story, narrative, and plot. Like Mutants and Masterminds does this really, really well. So does Fate. Let's see here. Dragon Strike. I love that game. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. We used to make fun of the included VHS video all the time. Do you think PF2 could do a good job in the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson? Maybe. I haven't read the Stormlight Archive. I know a million people who have, but it's Brandon Sanderson's a pretty hard fantasy genre, I think. So that probably could be reasonable to assume, but I'm not a Brandon Sanderson expert, so. Since the TPK demise of the Knights, how are the Knights doing? Well, we're kind of up in the air. I know Bob has started a 5e game at his home. A couple people are playing in it. Matt's playing in it. Nick is playing in it. But I'm currently not running really any games, as I'm kind of trying to figure out what's best. What's best for me? What's best for the channel? What is my group interested in, right? Like I could want to play some crazy, like, I don't know, Night Witches, which is a game by Jason Morningstar, who made Fiasco. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse game where you play the all-female Russian aviators of World War II. Very, very specific game. I'm not even saying it's my favorite game. It is interesting, but I'm just saying, if I want to play that game, well, that'd be great, but maybe no one else wants to play it, right? So that doesn't really serve me too much, but we're trying to figure out what the play is. And obviously we're continuing to try to do, these live streams and have everybody engaged, but the channel's a lot of work, and being committed to it is a lot of work as well. And, we just formed a company. We formed Knights of Last Call LLC. Can you believe it? And so I think we're trying to take it a little bit more seriously, and we might be trying to push it up to that next level. Some new people have sort of joined in. Our buddy Aaron is now kind of helping run everything, and he's kind of joined the Knights as a kind of a senior technical advisor, and he's helping run our Discords, and he's been kind of doing some of our sort of episodes with us. He brings a lot of game knowledge to the channel. So he hasn't played in any games with us yet, but maybe he will as well. So I think we're just trying to figure out what is the best play for the channel, but also what's the best play for me. And I think ultimately those two things are sort of coinciding. Let's see. I didn't like the attribute change in MMM3. I don't think I did either. I don't remember what it was, but I wonder how many people would ignore me if I try to run Vampire the Requiem 2nd edition on the Discord. I will be completely honest with you. I have never been a huge World of Darkness, New World Darkness, Old World of Darkness, Vampire 1st edition, Vampire 2nd edition, Mage the Awakening, Mage the whatever other thing it's called, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Werewolf the Rage, Mummy, Changeling, Hunter. There's so many. I was never a big fan. It's never my thing. It was too angsty for me. Even for me, it was too angsty. Did I ever run the Paladin in Hell scenario? I do. I did own that. I never ran it, but I did own it. I remember it was based on the cover art from 1st edition DMG, and it was pretty sweet. Damien loves Monster Management 3. Yeah, the powers are easier, but I don't know. It just lacks something. It lacks flavors. Masks is teenage drama superheroes play art by the pocket. Thank you, Damien. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to this, but yes, okay, that sounds perfect. So it almost sounds like Monster Hearts plus Mutants and Masterminds. Okay, that actually checks out. The Glass Cannon podcast, says my squeezing arm, does a series of 3-session trials of new systems. Do you think that would be appropriate for you guys before committing to a new game? Yeah. I'm just really bad. I overplan, and I always like to be really specific about things, and I fuss, and I want to make everything perfect before I ever do it. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like, hey, are we feeling this? Is this the right? Is our audience feeling this? Right? There are other concerns here, people. I appreciate all of you saying, Derek, I just want you to be happy. God bless you. You're a wonderful human being. But the reality of the situation is, this isn't just about me. It's not even just about my players. It's about all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean all of us. It's about you watching at home. It's about you who, have signed up for the Patreon. We're in this together. And I want this to be a educational and entertaining and, invigorating experience for all of us. And so I do need to balance that real situation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it this way, right? I would just be playing at home in my basement, no cameras, no lights, no audio, and I would just be doing it for me. I'm not. I'm doing it for you as well. So there are concerns to be made, and I appreciate everyone's openness towards that. But, I do take it seriously. I take my obligation, my responsibility to you seriously. Let's see. Fate has a very narrative push game. Yes, Fate is probably one of the strongest narrative pushes to a game that exists. Brune Brassax asked, where do you see Paizo direction and Keeping Up with D&D moving to its new edition content coming in 2024? Do you think its popularity will dip? Yeah, I mean, Pathfinder 2nd edition is never going to compete with D&D 5th edition. Nothing is going to compete with D&D. And I hesitate to even say 5th edition. Nothing is going to compete with D&D ever. It is so big now. It is going to continue to grow. It's just going to take everything. And I think we're powerless to help stop it. I think the game is going to continue to move in a direction that places it solidly in the middle. I personally think if they were smart, they would probably continue to push back or peel back on the simulation aspects, because they're going to look at their player base. They're going to look at the way that the thousands and tens of millions, I don't know, of people who are playing D&D out there are playing the way that they are playing D&D, and the rules that they are ignoring and the rules that they are embracing. I think you're going to continue to see D&D be pushed more and more towards almost like a very soft story game. It's not going to have much mechanical bite. It is not going to have strong simulationist aspects. They might add a point or two to the narrative score. They might lean a little bit more to try to bring that kind of more integrated, because that's the way that people are really playing a lot of 5e these days. And I think they're going to continue to push a narrative of D&D is it's not even a game. It's an activity. I don't know how to describe it, but I think that's the way that they're going to. That's my fear. That's what I think, but it's also my fear. Am I negative? Am I cynical? Maybe a little bit, but I do think that that's what they're going to do, because I think it's the safest thing that's going to push them towards the largest amount of growth. The fact is that most of the people who sit down to play don't care about the rules. They don't care about the simulationist aspect. They don't really care about anything, right? They just want to sit down and watch the show. And they want to watch a show because everybody else is watching the show. And that's kind of what D&D is trying to probably market itself and position itself as. Ben, I shouldn't be surprised that of anybody who would know or care or even be aware of what Night Witches is, that it would be you. So this both pleases me, but also makes me roll my eyes at the same time. Naturally, you would come in with a Night Witches is amazing. Figuring out what games Ben will and will not like is something that baffles me daily. That is well said, Damien. Ben seems to like everything. Oh, no, because he's right. Sometimes he'll be like, no, that game sucks. And you're like, what? How do you not like that game? It's so weird. Definitely check out Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time is fun. It's a card game. It has like different story prompts. You have to tell a story, but you have to tell it with the context of the prompt. I think it's really fun. I own it. I've played it before. I think it's a great GM education tool. Story forward narrative card game. Ben's got it. Of course he does. Question regarding Paladin Hell. You should upgrade it to 2nd edition. I ran it and it was such a joy to run. I don't remember the adventure well enough, but I mean, it sounds pretty sweet. And the art is, of course, legendary. So, Frank, how could you possibly be wrong? Jason asks, why all the hate for gnomish flick maces? They aren't that OP. I mean, they are advanced weapons, and they are at best on par with the Meteor Hammer, and that is a martial weapon. Well, Meteor Hammer probably sucks as well. I shit on the gnomish flick mace because, for me, it's the poster child of... It's the poster child of all these people who play these characters under the idea that they are somehow this unique and special snowflake, but in reality, they are just one of 18 million characters that are all the same. This is the equivalent of, in 2nd edition AD&D, of like everybody suddenly is a Drow Ranger with 2 scimitars, or a Drow Ranger with something else, right? You're just a Dritz clone. People will make up these really, because the gnomish flick mace is very powerful. It's actively overpowered. I do think it is. It is a one-handed reach weapon that can trip. All that combined, one-handed reach weapon that crits, knocks prone on a critical specialization because it has the flail subtype. One-handed reach weapon is pretty powerful. You could dual wield it. You can still wield a shield. There's a lot of advantages to having that. And, it's become the sort of de facto broken. And there was this infamous Reddit post of this party of like 3 fighters, all dual wielding gnomish flick maces with archetypes into champions so that they could get retributive strikes and stuff like that. Just super powerful, super cheesy. But what bothers me about it is that the way that everybody gets this is they're obviously humans. They don't want to be a gnome. Gnomes have a penalty to strength. You don't want to be a gnome. You gotta have a strength. And so you have all these characters and they're all like trying to pretend like they're like so clever and so unique. Like, I'm adopted by a gnome. I was adopted by a gnome. I was adopted. Like, it's just so stupid and silly. And I hate it. I really personally hate it. Also, from a fantasy standpoint, just, think of the cover of your favorite art. No one's wielding a gnomish flick mace. They're all wielding swords and axes and hammers, and they look really cool. This is a joke weapon for a joke race that it's stupid. It's just stupid. And I think what bothers me more than anything is, Damien got it perfect. Thank you for the super chat. You didn't even have to pay. I should pay you for this. But gnomish flick mace is my character is totally unique, and I totally didn't take this because of power weapon. That's exactly what it is. And it's like, yes, you did. And you're not unique. You're like one of a million other characters that all just take this broken weapon, and you're trying to come up with some really lame excuse about why it is that you have this weapon. If you are an actual gnome with a gnome flick mace, mazel tov. You're doing okay. Hot take on the Book of the Dead. Are we excited? I don't know. Probably not. There's so many books. I didn't like Guns and Gears. That's probably part of the problem. Gnomish Flick Mace is the versatile human of second edition. I'll also agree. Yeah, it's just silly. So no, I'm not. I haven't really paid much attention to it. I missed the stream the other day where they talked about it, and I don't know. I don't know what the book is going to be, honestly. I don't know if that's interesting enough for me to really be interested. Libris, it's weird because Libris Mortis, which was a third edition book, which was the Libris Mortis, the Book of the Dead or something, was one of my favorite third edition books. It did such a great job of really making undead cool and giving you all sorts of really cool feats and magical items and new monsters. So ironically, that was like one of my favorite third edition books. But, you know, with Pathfinder 2, there's just been so many books lately, and I'm already thinking about the next book of classes. And I'm, like I said, I haven't even fully read Guns and Gears yet, and I'm not really a big fan of the Inventor or the Gunslinger. So we'll see. Maybe it'll surprise me. I don't know. Every 5e table I've ever seen immediately rips out all the simulation elements. If next version isn't heavy narrative with light game elements, they are foolish, but I will hate it. #stream. Yeah, that actually makes sense, right? And every 5e table that I've observed or seen tends to do the same. They rip out all the simulation elements, and my guess is the next version will be lighter in the game elements, minimal simulation elements, and maybe with a little bit more narrative elements, but not so much that it's like Fate. It'll be really wishy-washy, would be my example. Brune with the big opinions. I personally don't watch Critical Role. I think it harms D&D. Do I think it harms D&D? I think D&D harms D&D. I do think Critical Role, I am a believer in the Matt Mercer effect. I don't think it's Matt Mercer's fault. He seems like an awesome person, and I think he's actually an incredible DM. And he's definitely a very good show person who has made millions of dollars for himself and his friends playing D&D, so well done, sir. But I do think it gives an extremely unrealistic depiction of what, one, your DM is going to be like, two, what your players are going to be like, and three, what a typical game session is going to be like. And I know a lot of people who, you know, I joined the game as part of a heritage, right? You know, my father taught his father, who taught my father, whatever, you know, my grandfather taught my father, who taught me. Now people go, I don't know anyone who's ever played D&D before. I have only ever watched Critical Role. I am going to go join a game. I am going to go start a game. And the only thing that I have to base this on is people like Matt Mercer. And that is pretty tough, right? That's just not realistic. But not only because he's so good, but also because that's just not the way that most people play games. So, and so then you have these DMs who are really mad at their players because their players are like, my players aren't role playing. Why aren't they just capable of spontaneously giving 25-minute monologues? Or you have players who are going like, my DM's terrible. Like they're playing an adventure, but when I told them that my character was secretly the heir to a lost underwater kingdom, they kind of shrugged at me and said, okay, that's cool. Maybe we could figure it out. They didn't respect me at all. It's like, all right, you're both idiots. Just go away. A Meteor Hammer is a the fact that it's called Meteor Hammer should already suggest that it's stupid, but Meteor Hammer is a two-handed. Gnomish Flick Mace is one-handed. It enables double slice, shield wielding, having a torch without a cost. Right, yeah. Gnomish Flick Mace is the high water mark of cheese. Dungeon Dragons 5th edition. I take one level dip into Hexblade Warlap because reasons. My character was secretly visited by a dark force, and they are, they're really trying hard to call this the PF2 Libris Mortis, but it looks more player focused. Okay, that's fine. As if players didn't have enough options in Pathfinder 2. We need more. I think overzealous fans / nerds harm D&D. True. D&D harms D&D. True. Hey, you're both idiots. Go away. All right. I believe Ben is a time traveler from the future. He knows. All right, fine. Meteor Hammer is a legit real life Chinese weapon, but maybe its implementation is still silly. And I kind of agree with Eon Rider here, that it's overzealous in that they either insist the thing they love is perfect and turn a blind eye to its flaws, or they hate anything and everything and loudly tell everyone. If anything, that's kind of what's become the sort of, I don't know, appeal of this channel of me ranting is I love this game. Let me tell you all the reasons why it sucks. Or I'll say, I would never play this game in a million years, but I love this mechanic. And I've just never gotten into fanboydom, and I just think blind zealotry is silly. And, I will say this. I'm not one of those people. I'm not going to preach. I'm not going to yell at someone because they don't want to play a different game. But I do think that you are very benefited from playing a variety of games. I think you're a better GM. Even if all you want to do is play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you will become a better dungeon master when you play different games. When you play different games, when you run different games, when you read different games. Is it annoying? Yes. Is it expensive? Possibly. But you will be better. And I just think that a lot of people right now in the gaming sphere are doing a lot of harm to the hobby. Because what it is to be a role-playing game, I think is losing something in this rise to brand fandom. It's just I think that people are just becoming sort of myopic, and they're becoming one singular view. And I think that personally, I just think it's unfortunate. I don't know that I'm not going to be some grog nerd yelling at the sun because the times are changing. That's fine. One of the reasons I buy games in print is because then I can keep playing them whenever I want. But Iodine, I'm not here to spread negativity. I love role-playing games. If you're playing D&D and you're having a fun time with your friends, more power to you. But one of the first things I would tell you is try something else. Keep playing D&D. In fact, maybe don't change from D&D, but figure out if there's other areas or other elements that you like. The only thing I will shit on continually for all time is unnecessary and never-ending fudging. When by unnecessary, I mean all. But it boggles my mind, this concept of when you're fudging, you're admitting that the game doesn't work. So why are you playing it? Find a game that works for you then. The more you fudge, the more you are saying, this game isn't what I want it to be. Fudging to me is like playing solitaire, and you're going through it, and then you reach the end of the deck, and you realize, I've run out of cards, and I didn't find... And then you go into one of the discard piles and go through it till you find an ace, and then you flip it over and put it up, and you're like, okay, yeah, but what are we doing here? The point, there is no point to this game anymore. What are we even trying to accomplish here? I understand that some people do that, and they fudge and they think it's for the better. I think you're wrong. I think you're delusional. I just don't. Again, if you're fudging, it's because you're admitting that the game is broken. It's not doing what you want it to do. Then find a game that does. Why would you want to work against the game? That just sounds tiresome and tedious. Now you're like, I got to keep up this lie. It's like cheating on your girl. It's like, now you got to live this double life, and you got to make sure you're telling the players the right thing because that's not what actually happened, and you got to secretly hold it to yourself. You got to go make an anonymous account on Reddit and talk about how my players don't know it, but I fudge all the time because I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. It's like, wow, you need to consider changing the game up here, because it doesn't sound like this thing is doing for you what you want it to do. So go find an activity or a game that does it. Maybe it's not a game. Maybe it sounds like maybe what you don't want to do is a game at all. In the most extreme versions, I would say, why don't you go, write some fiction and then post it into a new author critique Reddit forum and have people submit their thoughts on it, because it sounds like on the far end, that's really what you want to do. Or on the other end of the side, pick a game that is extremely open and extremely narrative and extreme, like where you can't fudge because the mechanics of the game are essentially built into that the GM has this agency to do what they want to do. And maybe the game even has a mechanic built into it that says, oh yeah, GM, you can do whatever you want, but when you cheat, give the player a hero point, because that's what Mutants and Masterminds is about. Oh man, I really need my villain to get away because he's the big bad villain. Okay, well, say he pushes a button and suddenly a field of energy surrounds him, which is impenetrable, and he starts to dissipate as he teleports away, as he activates his emergency transponder recorder. He totally didn't have that, but I don't have to lie to my players and pretend like they had it the whole time. Instead, I give them all a hero point. They understand that I've just cheated, but they're happy about it because that's cool. That's what villains do in comic books. They get away, and also they have hero points, and they're going to be sweet, and they're going to be strong at some point in the future. So just do that. Anyways. Okay, that was a kind of a rant there. 5e. PF2 does have its, so 5e and Critical Role both have blind style fans. Pathfinder 2 does as well. It does as well. I mean, that's one thing I've said time and time again. I mean, we did a Pathfinder 2 AP. I've talked a lot about the mechanics of Pathfinder 2. Pathfinder 2 interests me as a very mechanical game. I think choosing feats and leveling up and getting little bits and powers and picking my magical items. I'm playing in a 5e Pathfinder 2 game. I'm a cleric of Saren Ray, free archetype druid. I enjoy looking at the spell lists, and I enjoy looking at the magical item lists and figuring out what I want to take. That's fun. It is fun. It's really exciting. But I never wanted the channel to be a Pathfinder 2 channel, and I don't want to give the impression that I am a Pathfinder 2 zealot. I am not. I personally am not excited for the Book of Dead. I don't want more character options. I know that sounds weird, but I kind of agree. I'm like, can we just please? Dark Archives is going to be out in another couple of months. My God, how many classes do we need? Honestly, is there class? Okay. Anyways, it's crazy to me. Let's see. There have always been D&D only people, and there always will be. That's true, Jason. That is true. I just think there's so many more and more of them now. I've already spent thousands on all my role-playing stuff. I spent $500 at least just trying to get Adventures in Middle-earth 5e. eBay hurts my wallet. I picked up the Adventures in Middle-earth 5e stuff right before they lost the license and it all went kapoof. I went to like a game store. They had like 3 or 4 of the books. I picked them up. I know there's probably more, but I at least got like the Lore Master's book and the Player's book. And I think I got 2 of the source books, and I got them for like retail price. And that was A+. I do like that. One of my next systems that I want to pick up is I do want to pick up Free League's The One Ring 2nd edition, because I'd like to see those mechanics represented in a non-5th edition way. But I will say the Adventures in Middle-earth 5e stuff from Cubicle 7, I think, did it. That is really cool, and I like how they implemented the 5e rule set in that Tolkien world with that Tolkien mindset, and I think that is a really cool adaptation of the 5e rule set. Let's see here. I played for the first time in a long time over Roll20 using multiple cameras. Oh, no, sorry. I mean, that's cool, but I thought that was a question. There are a lot of crazy people in this world. I'll raise you GMs that fudge with my buddy who reads Adventures APs that he plays in. Oh, because he wants to make the best decisions possible. Oh, man. All right. I fold. You win. Because that's actually something that I experienced kind of for the first time running Rise of the Rune Lords. And I never really experienced it before, but this was like a conversation that I had with Bob, and I think maybe Nick. But like this idea that, like, obviously I don't like railroading. Adventure paths are by definition pretty linear. You have some wiggle room, but more or less you need to follow the path. It's an adventure path. Path is another, term for a road. So it's kind of, maybe it's not strictly on rails, but there's a road. There's definitely a place you're supposed to go. But this idea that the players were like worried that they weren't following what you were supposed to do. And I didn't understand this until I thought about a buddy of mine had lived with me for a year during the pandemic, and he was playing a bunch of video games, and he would sometimes like get worried, like when he was playing a quest, it was like, you get to like a point in the story and you'd have like 3 dialogue options, and he would like go and look up online which one you were supposed to pick, because he didn't want to like screw up the game by picking the wrong answer. This was very absurd to me. This was very weird to me, very strange to me, but it sounds very similar where these players, sometimes Bob would be worried, like, what are we supposed to do? Not what do I want to do, not what do I think we should do, but like I'm nervous or anxious because I don't want to mess up the story. The story seems so cool. The last thing I want to do is fuck it up with my naivete and my noobness. It's like, that's the point of playing the game. But like Bob didn't want to ruin the story by doing his own thing. So that's a very interesting concept. That is very interesting. Yeah. Fudging means you don't respect the game and you think your story, not the one the table builds, is better enforcing your narrative. I completely agree with that. I also just think, again, I think it's kind of silly. It's like you're fighting against what the game is doing, so find something else that's better. Let's see. I said that today on that Roll for Combat stream. I said, talking to the guy who wrote it, or part of who wrote it, I said, I just finished up Secrets of Magic. I haven't really even started Guns and Gears. Yes, I've read through the Inventor and Gunslinger, so I know what they can do, but not like detailed read. And there's like 900 guns in that stupid book that I don't give a crap about any of them. But like, I haven't even read through that. And now like another book is going to come out, Book of Dead, and maybe by the time I get to Book of Dead, Dark Archives will be out. I'll feel like I'll be 2 or 3 books. Probably 2 Lost Omens books will have come out by then. Having more classes of fun groups can always just limit classes to CRB. 100%. Like I am not forced. My concern here, Lug, is that I'm a Pathfinder 2 content creator, and like people will say like, "What do you think of the Gunslinger?" And I'll go, I haven't really delved into it that much. I've looked at it at a high level, and people go, "What? That's crazy." So I do feel a certain pressure to at least stay up on top of everything, even if that's kind of silly. But so that is fun. But yeah, I did that in a Pathfinder 1 game. By the end of Pathfinder 1, there was so much content, there was so much stuff everywhere. I just said, you know what? We're doing core rulebook only, and we're sticking to it. Cian says PF2 will probably always need more classes as long as the PF1 folks say 2E doesn't have enough content for me to look at it, which is insane. PF1 had too much content. Full stop. It was bloated mess, and I don't want them to make the same mistake with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Personally, I would love to design my own class system for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, where you got rid of all of these classes and you instead built a framework of archetypes, and you could plug and play different abilities. I think that to me is far more interesting than what these sort of predefined packages that the classes represent. That's wow. See, my people know me. How many classes do we need? 3: melee, skill, magic. Everything else is archetype. Bingo. That is exactly right. I gotta check out this Time Wizards, Iodine. You keep mentioning it. Talking about Numenera Cipher system. I do like Numenera. It's pretty cool. Again, the setting is a little weird for me, but the Cipher system itself is pretty solid. I just don't remember enough about the Cipher system to know how integrated it was with Numenera. Obviously, they've used it for other games, but I think they've been kind of weird too. I like to go off the rails of AP and try to break them. There's even an element to that, though, where I can say maybe you are being kind of problematic, right? Like, as a GM, if I'm running an adventure path, it's because I don't want to create an adventure, or I don't know how to create an adventure, or I don't have the time to create an adventure, or I, quite frankly, can't be bothered to. And you trying to go off the rails is kind of maybe violating a certain aspect of the social contract. I know that sounds really strange, but like, this is the paradox, Golarian. It's the paradox, which is like, yeah, I'm a player. I should be able to go do whatever I want. But it's like when you play D&D and like the DM goes, you know, let's say you're playing classic old school and the DM bought the Temple of Elemental Evil and that's what he's prepared. Or he made his own dungeon and he spent the whole week or 2 weeks creating a dungeon outside of town in the ancient, you know, hills where they used to bury the kings of old. And the party goes, you know what? No, we're going to go south. I want to go south along the river and see what's there instead. Like, part of accepting that you're playing in an adventure path, part of accepting that you're playing in any RPG campaign is understanding that, like, it's not real life and the GM doesn't have everything prepared. I mean, there are games that you could do this with that require no or zero minimal prep. Blades in the Dark is one of these games. Players could literally show up. I don't prep anything for a Blades in the Dark session. I have literally no idea what's going to happen until I get there and I go, what do you guys want to do this week? And they say, we need to expand our territory down to the wharf. I think we need to start a revolution in the Dockers Union and try to implant ourselves in so that we can get our candidate voted as president of the union so we can control it secretly from the top. Sounds good. Let's roll with that. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen until that happens. But if a game requires prep, part of me thinks that the expectation of you as a player is you kind of go along with it. So I agree with you that I think that, like, it's fun to mess with the AP a bit, but I also think that, like, part of your responsibility as a player is to accept that and play along with that, which is kind of also why it circles back to why I don't like APs as much, because that's just not the way I like to play. So it's kind of tough. I generally play online and reveal all my roles, so fudging is not something I really care about, but I wouldn't get mad if GMs use it for specific moments, maybe epic role-playing stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I have read the Dragon Age system. I'm familiar with it. I like the stunt die aspect of it, and it's pretty cool. I think it's a cool system. Oh yeah. D20 Modern. I actually have it's like right there. I have D20 Modern. I had a bunch of D20 Modern stuff, and they had one class for each of the 6 stats, and I thought that was really cool. Actually, I did like that. And let's see. APs are fun in general. If you want to break APs just for the fun of it, go and, well, yeah, play by yourself. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying about it. It's a tricky situation because you feel as a player a kind of pressure to obey because you understand that, that there is no fourth wall, right? Like that on the other side of that path, it's not more empty woods. It's nothing, right? Like it's not prepared. The GM did not prepare that because that's not what the adventure is. And the adventure writers presume you're not going to go there because that's not where the adventure is. And so there's an element. And then you put yourself in this weird situation because the players start trying to go off of it, but the DM doesn't have anything prepared. So the GM could say, all right, we'll go that way. I have nothing prepared, so I'm going to close my book and I'll wrap up my screen. And I'm going to go home this week and I'll work on some stuff for that random forest that you guys wanted to enter, and we'll pick it up next week. Cool session, guys. And then logs off the game or gets their stuff and go home. Okay, well, that's not what you want to have happen. So now the GM is sitting there going okay, how do I get them back on track? How do I get them to where they're supposed to be? And it's like this weird angsty battle, and no one wins. No one wins. Could you switch to live chat instead of top chat for a moment so that you could see the link to Time Wizards? I am in live chat. I think my mod or my things don't allow links. I think YouTube in general doesn't allow links in the chat. So, but I mean, I can look it up. It's totally fine. A pet peeve is when I've had players that bring characters to an AP that aren't motivated by the AP. I mean, yeah, this is something that Aaron has always said. He's very smart about this, which is if you create an adventure or a hero for my campaign and then complain that this doesn't align with your motivations, that's not my problem. That's your problem. you're the one that screwed up. And when I've played APs, I am very open about my players, with my players about, hey, this is what this campaign is going to be about. This is what this campaign is going to drive towards. And this is why I'm telling you this, because not to spoil the mystery, because who the hell cares about that anyways, but like, I want you to make a character that is going to be fundamentally aligned with what this game to be about. If this campaign is going to be all about fighting a never-ending war against the undead, then I don't want you to go and make a character that is specialized in dealing with and fighting Fae. Like, make a character that's built around undead. If you go and make a character that's dealt with specializing around Fae, and then you want to complain to me, I'm not sorry, I'm not listening. I'll just kill you, and you can make a new character that's better. Like, that's your fault. No, I understand you're not a jerk. I know I understand what you're saying. You're not trying to be disruptive. I'm just saying, like, what you're actually talking about is actually a real, like, a real concern. I think it is something that even a well-intentioned player might feel bad that they accidentally screwed up the DM's campaign because they just had an idea and they wanted to do something. They didn't understand that they were actually shitting all over the adventure path. And now the GM is in sort of a spiral because they're like, I want to say yes, but I also don't have anything prepared for there. And I can't just make that up on the fly. So now I have to like force them to go back. And so now aren't I railroading them? And I feel bad about that. So, I started jamming with D20 Modern. Agile Hero was absolutely broken. Haha, such AC, excellent mobilities. I thought that was a cool system. I really did like that. Let's see. Legitimate question. Personally, as a GM, do you prefer low-level play, mid-level play, or high-level play when running RPGs? Well, that varies depending on the adventure, the game session. But let's use D&D as a baseline. Mid-level. For me, the sweet spot of D&D, Pathfinder, probably kicks in around level 5 and probably ends around level 9 or 11. When the characters start gaining the ability to teleport, planar travel, raise the dead, to me, that is like God level powers. And these characters should no longer be adventurers. They should be kings and queens. They should be rulers. They should be the power brokers of their universe. They are the Elrons. They are the Galadriels. They are the Curdanes of their world. They are literally reshaping reality. They have the ability to resurrect the dead. They are literally Jesus level characters in their game world. And you're going to just go send them on another adventure. It seems silly and trite to me. So I really like the game to kind of taper off around that level. Maybe you get one good, fun, White Council, Galadriel, Sauron, Elrond going to fight, the Necromancer at Goldudur. But like low level, most of these games, you kind of suck. You don't have a lot of options and you don't have a lot of choices. I like choices in games. So like right around 3rd level, I think you have enough choices. 5th level is really good. But if I played a campaign that was like 5 to 11, that would be probably pretty sweet for me. So I would say mid-level for sure. Let's see. Let's see. All right, finally at the bottom of the list. Well, I said originally that I was only going to go to 9 o'clock tonight for a 2-hour stream because I streamed for so long this morning or this afternoon with Roll for Combat. But I'm feeling good. You all are being very attentive and loving, and we still got about 35, 36 people in here, so I'm happy to stay online. If you have questions for me, please let me know. There we go. There we go. Right there. Please let me know, and I'll try to answer them. But in terms of my personal thoughts on the matter, I guess what it really comes down to, and I'll just keep talking until someone asks a question or until the stream ends, that I'll do the list of games that I'm really interested in right now. Pathfinder 2. I'm interested in it. Number one, Pathfinder 2. Number 2, Forbidden Lands from Free League. Most of these games I thought I had just sitting around here. I guess I don't have Free League sitting around here. Free League, Forbidden Lands. I think it's a really cool survival game with sort of an OSR feel, but with modern game sensibilities. I really like that. Number 2, Dungeon World and Blades in the Dark. I know these are different game systems, but I view them very similarly. They are very strong, sort of abstract games that sort of skip on the simulation in order to enhance the GM's ability to play prepless. Also, neither of these games require the GM to make any dice rolls, and I love that. Okay, the players roll all the dice in these games, and I love it. And these aren't in any particular order, by the way. So Pathfinder 2, Forbidden Lands, Dungeon World / Blades in the Dark, and those could be other versions of Blades in the Dark. It could be Scum and Villainy. It could be Band of Blades. Legend of the Five Rings. Really in love with that system. Still in love with that system. Really in love with the concept of playing a samurai and dealing with these issues of Bushido and dealing with all of the guilt and the angst that comes with that. Kieran says the Blades cover is fucking dope. Is that a limited edition? Yes, this is the Kickstarter edition. If you were a Kickstarter for Blades in the Dark, this is the version that you got. So not only is the Kickstarter edition have a different cover, it also has this bonus section here on Udusha, which is like a second area outside of just Duskwall. It's a different city in a different part of the world. It has a whole extra section, but that was the bonus you got for being one of the Kickstarters. You got that cool book. So Blades in the Dark, Dungeon World, Forbidden Lands, Legend of the Five Rings, Pathfinder 2, and I'm really digging. None of my friends are really into Dune, but I really like the 2D20 system from playing Star Trek Adventures with Damien. But I also picked up Dune: Adventures in the Imperium. And this game is very sweet, and I love the idea of making my own house and playing against the Landsrod and dealing with the Spacing Guild and the politics of the Bene Gesserit and the Padishah Emperors. And I think that's just so cool. I love Dune. I love the movie. I was very happy that it won many awards. Should have won Best Director. Somehow didn't, but whatever. And I love Dune. So Dune is really great. And I just think the D20 system is really interesting, and I like a lot of what it's doing. I like a lot of the stuff it does with threat and momentum. It's very much in line with kind of a Mutants and Masterminds back and forth kind of play. And I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen out of Star Trek Adventure so far. But I think I like the idea of playing Dune even more. So yeah, that is kind of my list. Oh, I did pick up this. This also seems pretty sweet to me, I will admit. It didn't even get nominated for Best Director. That's crazy, right? It somehow got nominated for like Best Editing, Best Sound, Best Cinematography, It's like, how could it get nominated for all of these things that make a great movie, but then not get nominated the person who did who like put that all together? Anyways, this was recommended to me by Ben from the Discord, and unbeknownst to me, I should say I knew about that I knew they did a second edition. I had read first edition a long time ago, but John Wick, who wrote this wrote this for AEG originally, also did the original Legend of the Five Rings game. Those were the two games he did, Legend of the Five Rings and Seventh Sea. And I really like Legend of the Five Rings, and the idea of it being applied to Seventh Sea, also very cool. So this one maybe isn't like as high on the list, but it does tickle my fancy, and I did like it. And I haven't finished my read through yet, but I'm kind of digging it, and I kind of like the world too. I like this fake alternate history Europe, so it's like it feels familiar enough that you feel like you know what you're talking about, but it's still fantasy, so you can kind of make it up. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Uh, let's see, total entropy. Yeah, adventuring 1 to 10, and then running the kingdoms from 11 to 20. And that's, by the way, what you used to do in original D&D. That's how the game was. Your Vegas trip level with us, Mace. You chase any tail while in the City of Sin? You could tell us a PG version. No. I was splitting a room with 2 other guys, and I am a single man, but I am decidedly not on the prowl right now. I need to get in shape first, ladies and gentlemen. I have let myself go during the COVID pandemic. Got out of the gym, ate like shit, and just need to do all the things. I've gone up and down with my weight many times throughout my life. I was probably close to 300 pounds in my 20s, and then in my late 20s, I got down to like 185. And then in my early 30s, I probably leveled out around 220. And I stayed there for most of my 30s. And then probably the last 2 or 3 years, I probably gained like 60 or 70 pounds. So I'm actually probably 280, 285 right now. So for me personally, pursuing a relationship or whatever is as much about me as it is about them. And so, I want to make sure that I'm presenting my best face forward. So, but I'm excited about it. Like I said, I bought a Peloton bike. Very excited about that, working like that kind of class atmosphere while I can still do it at home. And I'm hoping that I can, over the next 6 to 12 months, undo some of the damage of the last 2.5 years. So to answer the question, no, I did not chase any tail. There were some pretty girls there, but no one that was it. But plus two, like everybody that goes to Vegas now, it usually goes as a couple. Like there's very few people I feel that go as single to Vegas. It's very much a couple's destination. At least that's how I feel when I've seen it. I'm very unusual in that I sometimes go with a group of my friends. What is my opinion on non-broken, super clever character builds and interactions? Do you encourage them or frown upon them? Example, I discovered a combo 2 years ago with an archer monk that can turn reactions into free attacks. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the game. I mean, if it's legitimately probably something that is overpowered and isn't what the designers intended, and it's like, it's one of those things where I go, cool, that was fun once or twice, and if it really is that powerful that it's probably broken, then I don't know. My expectation has always been that you should stop doing it. But if it's like just a good solid idea, like, oh hey, I took attack of opportunity and I have a reach weapon and I'll trip them, and then when they stand up I can hit them and they still can't hit me. Like that's just, I don't know, that's just good solid play. They call it COVID-19 because of the 19 pounds. Well, they should have called it COVID-59. That's all. So yeah. All right. When do you feel like everyone will get back together in person again? I don't know. That is a tough question. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a little frustrated. I'm a little annoyed. I have this amazing, awesome Patreon that so many of you are supporters of. And I get to, benefit from your hard-earned money, which you graciously donate to us each month. But I have to pay like $850 a month for a studio where we used to record our AP. And nowadays we do almost nothing there. We record our podcast there. We've done a couple review videos there, but for the most part, it is just laying fallow. And that is very frustrating to me. And it lies fallow for a bunch of reasons. One has been people have been getting sick here and there, and everyone's very concerned about COVID still. Number two, our players are kind of scattered all around the, Northeast Ohio. And for people like Tim and Matt, it is a long drive to come to the studio, and it's tough to ask them to do that on a weekday. We play fairly late, especially with us being live. So it could be, it is a little frustrating. Jason, peace out, man. Enjoy it. Thank you for coming. So yeah, I love the energy of playing in person. I feel more restricted by Foundry than I feel empowered by Foundry. I've many more instances where I felt annoyed by Foundry than when I felt empowered by Foundry. So there are cool things that you can do with Foundry. There's 100. Hey, I'm going to roll 24d6 for this massive attack, and it figured it out for us instantaneously. That is actually awesome. But more or less, I find it to be more annoying. I like miniatures, and I like being able to quickly draw on maps. And I mean, some of that might be if I was playing with Foundry for months and months and months and months and years and years and years, I would get so good with it. But for me, it's a little bit frustrating. But I think the energy level of being in person is there's nothing like it. Yeah, total entropy. Nothing like it in person. Yeah, I agree. Part of the reason why I'm excited about going to Origins, hopefully, I mean, I've got a ticket for Origins and Gen Con. I just don't have a place to stay yet in Indy for Gen Con. But part of the reason I'm just excited just to start figuring out how to, meet and interact with people again. It's sort of a skill that has been lost over the last couple of years. I could be using Roll20. I did use Roll20. I played in a 1-to-20. I was a player. I played in a 1-to-20 5e game, D&D 5e game using Roll20. That was brutal. We routinely crashed it. I did a Mutants and Masterminds game on Roll20. It was okay. I didn't like the sheet. I did a Blades in the Dark game on Roll20. I like the sheet. I like the Roll20. I haven't played with the Foundry implementation of Blades in the Dark, but I did do a Blades in the Dark game with Roll20. I thought that handled it fine. I thought that was good. Didn't have a good clock implementation like I'm sure Foundry does. So that was a little annoying, but the character sheet worked really well. So the biggest problem with Roll20 is just the cost structure, the pricing structure, the whole way it's set up, the fact that it's not open source, that it's underdeveloped, it's laggy, it's performance issues. It's not very good. So, yeah. And I think the biggest thing, and I'll say this honestly, is when I played as a player in Roll20, it's harder for me to stay engaged, especially if cameras aren't on, but it's just, even right now, it's like, if this was my Roll20 screen, if it's not my turn, oh, I got Instagram right here, or I got Reddit right here, like, it's hard to stay engaged. It really is. I go up to my local game store and I see people playing Pathfinder Society, or I see people playing like D&D and stuff. These groups that get together and they've got like 8 players, and they've got 2 tables pushed together, and there's a beleaguered DM who's doing their best, and they've got players who have got their character sheet on D&D Beyond, and they're playing in person, mind you, and they've got their character sheet on D&D Beyond. It's on a laptop or it's on a tablet, and I can see from where I'm standing, like, they are playing a mobile game on their tablet, in the session. I don't even understand what that person is doing, why they're doing it, why they're even there. Like, it's hard for me to not want to go over and just smack the tablet right off of the table and say, I'm sorry, GM, sir, you need to leave. Like, you are not welcome at this man's, like, this person is DMing for you. What the hell are you doing? So I can only imagine what that player would be like if they were playing remote, if they were playing online. So, the other thing, to what Luke said here is, I also find that Foundry and all the focus on the widgets and the gadgets and the maps and the lighting effects and did you draw in your maps, and I think it makes you focus maybe on the wrong things. I don't know. The jury is still out on that. But there are times when I feel like all this technology hurts more than it helps, for sure. Gabe, I hope you're the best, man. That is there are plenty of us out there, but I will be freely admitting that unfortunately a lot of the things that make people interested in role-playing games also sometimes make them socially awkward. It can make them difficult to deal with. It can make them hard to get to know. And that is an unfortunate truth that, the blessing of role-playing games is that it allows us to be this person that we're not. And that is very appealing to people who sometimes have a hard time interacting with other people. And it has been in my experience that I have met a lot of people who struggle with social interaction in role-playing games because they struggle with social interaction in real life. But that's why they're playing role-playing games. So it's kind of like a unfortunate chicken and the egg scenario, but it is the case that, Jesus Christ, I got this no-nat thing going on here. It is the case that it can be a trying process, but at the end of the day, remember, do not play these games with people who you would not have a beer with. I cannot stress that enough, or a coffee. If you wouldn't like to spend 1 hour with them drinking a nice beverage, you're definitely not going to spend 4 hours every week or every 2 weeks playing an in-depth role-playing game with them. You're just going to lose your mind. A no-net thing going on. My hair, I had like a cowlick thing going on. Oh, there's a lot of funny. There's some good April 1st videos that we could do. So we'll see about that. I kind of forgot it was April 1st, but that would be fun. Listen, I have no Nat's the GOAT. He's got more subs than Paizo. How he did that, I'll never know. Yeah, I agree with that, Atomic Hobo. I do think playing on VTTs could definitely kill. It could kill some of the vibe of the, of the viscerality of a role playing game. So, no. I was saying I had a cowl. I had my hair was going crazy because of the headband. All right. It is closing in on 9:30 Eastern time here, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everybody who hung out with me tonight. Sorry if I ruffled some feathers. I'm a work in progress, and I want to find, what's right for me and for the group and for the channel, and there's a lot of games that I'm really interested in, but again, it has to be on my terms, right? And I don't like to compromise, and I don't want to compromise, especially when it comes to something as important to me as a role-playing game. And, I don't just do this surface level, it's a deep dive for me, and I really want to get something out of it. Brune asks, have you ever thought about everyone dressing in costumes for this game? I'm sure Bob would totally love that and do that. I'm not much of a cosplayer or costume guy, so, just get people to play queer art house games on this channel and be happy. We may do that anyways, just just to have fun. I have not played Mork Borg, but I am aware of the game, and I there's that game is starting to tip too much into an element that I don't enjoy as much, which isn't to say that it's not my thing, but it's getting a little too nihilistic and kind of super danger, super life is cheap meat grinder type. I gets a little bit too much into that respect. That is an area that I have found does not appeal to me as much as time has gone on. Steven said it best. People focus on maps and positioning rather than the theater of the mind. It ends up limiting the experience sometime, and rolling real dice is so much better, and there's definitely no two ways about that. Nothing beats real dice. So, all right, everybody. I am going to say goodnight there. I want to say thank you so much. I want to say thank you for tipping. I want to say thank you for being a Patreon member. If you're not, and you want to join the conversation, join the group, join the fun, check out the link below. And if you just participated with your time and your thoughts and your well wishes, your positivity, your smart ideas, I want to say thank you to you as well, too. So, Brune, I like it. Good night. Everyone, I do love that. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call.
need you more.